So we've reached quite a good place. We've enabled our standalone components. We've then bootstrapped our application. We've provided some routes to our router module using this import providers from. We've broken out our app routes. So now it's time to actually get our app component rendering our routes. Now, the way that we do this, instead of using our previously known app module where we had our ng module and we had this imports, we essentially want to do the same thing but on our app component. Now, it's up to you where you want to do this. I quite like having this standalone flag at the top. Underneath of our standalone, we're going to add an import. The imports property specifies the standalone component template dependencies. And the key here is template dependencies, directives, components, and pipes that can be used within its template. So the key differentiator here, instead of using an ng module, in an ng module, we would import things such as the common module, which then allows us to use ngIf, ngClass, ngStyle, anywhere in those components that are registered in that particular module. The same with our router module. We never had this router outlet giving us an error before. So the way that we can essentially fix this is by importing just the router module. So we can say imports, router, module, hit enter. This then automatically imports it at the top. We can then hit save, and you can see our application is in fact working a little bit more. However, we do have a null injector error. Donut service, HTTP client, all of these things are now giving us errors because we're trying to use them in other components that are being rendered. And of course, we still have an ng module set up elsewhere in our application. So piece by piece, we're going to end up with a really nice standalone example. And following the trail of errors, we can then slowly refactor our application. Now, don't worry too much. This may seem a bit daunting following all these errors, but I'm going to teach you all the practices and explain them as we go so everything makes sense to you. So just to recap before we dive into the next lesson, the way that we do this is importing any ng modules that we want to use. For example, our router module, we need to import this ng module to allow us to use the router outlet. It might be that in later versions of Angular, we can import this router outlet by itself and then go and pass it in instead of our router module. But you can see at the bottom, we have the directive router outlet appears in imports, but is not standalone. So it might be that the Angular team is going to break this out for us. So that again, we do not need to use this entire router module. But for now, this is the practice that we must adopt because this is an ng module by itself. When it comes to using other components and pipes and services, we're also going to use this import and pass them into our components. So with this in mind, this is a nice short little video on how we can provide an existing Angular ng module. And it might be that you have an ng module elsewhere in your application. For example, our admin module is still an ng module. So this approach then allows us to incrementally, if you would like to move across to this standalone style, refactor your application as such. The next step that we need to do is start to provide our dependencies for our particular routes, which we're going to cover in the next few lessons.